Now, Rick Warren, we're going to look at some of his reasons why in a couple of clips, is not the worst. By any stretch of the imagination, is he not the worst, right? He's certainly nowhere near the top tier defenders of egalitarianism. So let's hear some statements from Rick Warren about this shift. I guess we'll set it up with the first clip.
To get the refreshing sound of my diet.
Some of them would probably say, well, the Confession of Faith says that the office of pastor is to be held by men qualified by Scripture. And Saddleback now has women pastors. How do you see that?
Well, in the first place, Southern Baptists have always been anti-creedal. I grew up with the phrase, we have no creed but Christ, we have no book but the Bible. This is not a battle between liberals and conservatives. All the liberals left a long time ago. Everybody in the SBC believes in the inerrancy of Scripture. Now we're talking about difference of interpretation. Those particular passages, Titus, Timothy, and Corinthians, have literally hundreds of interpretations. We should be able to expel people over sin, racism, sexual abuse, other sexual sins, things like that. But this is over. You mean, wait a minute? We can disagree over the atonement. We can disagree over election, and we can disagree over dispensationalism. We can disagree over the second coming. We can disagree over the nature of sin, but we can't disagree over what you name your staff.
Wait. I'm coming back to you.
Yeah.
Here we are.
So this illustrates the point that I made earlier. Okay, I agree that it's not a battle of conservatism versus liberal theology. I think the Southern Baptist Convention overwhelmingly conservative theologically. Egalitarians, there's a lot of egalitarians that are conservative. Now, not all egalitarians are conservative theological. There are no liberal complementarians that I'm aware of, right?
Right.
but there
the Venn diagram's a little whack here.
Right. But I think within the SBC, even if you're an egalitarian, like I was, I'm conservative theologically, right? So that's fair. In the SBC, at least, they're conservative. But as I mentioned earlier, the Southern Baptist Convention convened a panel to construct of theologians, pastors, etc., professors, whatever, to construct the Baptist faith and message. They decided what they wanted to be vague about. I'm just going to say
ambiguous.
Ambiguous about certain things, and what they wanted to be absolutely clear on intentionally. The Southern Baptist Convention has in my opinion, where I think Rick Warren's going off the rails here, the Southern Baptist Convention has every right to say, we are going to differ on the end times. We're going to make a vague statement that Jesus wins in the end, essentially, right? But I mean, about the nature and extent of the atonement, we have all agreed that we're not going to be firm on that. Mm-hmm. We have agreed not to be firm on all of these issues. The continuation or the cessation of the sign gifts, for example. They don't take a position on that. We're going to just make statements that say something, but not much, right? It's kind of what it is. You know, there's some good things in there. But they have the right to decide.
Some good things in the Baptist faith and message. Right. That's good to hear.
Yeah. But they have the right to decide that those are issues that we are going to agree to disagree upon, and the right to decide what issues they are not going to disagree on. And I'm going to stand up for the SBC's right to determine that for themselves, more than I'm going to say, just because you fell out of cooperation over a specific thing that they drilled down on and explicitly said, this is our position.
Yeah, like this is one of the few things they were real clear about.
Right.
That's what you're trying to say.
And you're trying to say, I'm going to fight them because even though the Constitution that says they can do this to me, because this is one of those things that they're clear about, I'm going to say because it's non-binding on churches, sure, but I think when you become an egalitarian, you are no longer within loose association with their doctrinal statement, such as it is, because that is explicitly rejected in their doctrinal statement. So I think something that is explicitly rejected in their doctrinal statement can be used under that article in the Constitution that we just read to disfellowship people as not having, enough of a similar belief system. So, that's where I'm at on that. But anyway...
Well, New Testament Theologist is helpful here, as we might expect that he would be. He said, well, to be fair, the BF&M 2000 is clear. But then he says, not all Southern Baptists are fine with the 2000, and some prefer the 1963.
That is true. Mm-hmm. And some Southern Baptist churches don't care at all about it. There are probably some Southern Baptists out there who've never even heard of the Baptist Faith and Message 2000, right? So what? The SBC has the right to deter the executive committee, because of the way that they're structured as an organization of cooperating churches, has the right to decide these things.
Now, Maria says, and I agree with her, women have the Great Commission commanded to them. They are to preach the gospel, as are all Christians. Women shouldn't be the leader of a church, but can preach, i.e. Beth Moore. In other words, this is the soft complementarianism that I was raised with, frankly.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that.
Women can preach and women can teach, but perhaps the position of elder, it's never seems permitted explicitly in Scripture.
And we'll get into that more of that here in a minute.
I thought that might segue you, Bridget.
But the thing that I wanted to, that first clip, also I wanted to point out in that first clip, that you see that he did mention Titus and 1 Timothy, but said nothing about it. So let's go to the next clip.
First, I understand why people get upset about this, because I believed the way they did until 3 years ago. And I actually had to change because of Scripture. Culture could not change me on this issue. Anecdotes could not change me on this issue. Pressure from other people would not change me on this issue. What changed me was when I came to confrontation with 4 scriptures nobody ever talked about, that I felt had strong implications about women in ministry. And nobody had ever shown me. I knew the Titus passage. I knew the Timothy passage. I knew 1 Corinthians. And every time people say, why don't you have women pastors? I say, show me a verse. You give me one verse, I'll consider it, because I'm a Bible guy. I can't just say, well, everybody's doing it. Or I've been to 165 countries and I've seen churches of 30, 40, 50,000 people led by a senior pastor who's a woman. That's not enough for me. I have to have a biblical basis.
Now, that's all fine and good. Now, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that this was not a cultural thing. Mine was not a cultural thing. I mean, I changed mine on the basis of study.
To the culture, Pritchett.
Of course.
You thought, I can't be seen as this gruff, overly masculine, conservative brute.
Yeah.
I must be seen as the French model that I am.
Okay, that's exactly it. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he came to this conclusion on the basis of study, but there's no evidence of it, because again, in that clip, the second time he mentions, I know this passage in 1 Timothy 2 and Titus, and I know the passage in 1 Corinthians 14. He never, in the rest of this thing, talks about those passages again. And this is
Would you call that soft peddling? He's basically bringing them up so that he knows,
right?
And giving the impression, whether this was an intention or not, that I dealt with it because I did reference it.
Yes.
And then moving on.
Yes. And I want to tell all of my egalitarian friends, this is what you don't do, because 1 Timothy 2:12 and following, or and you could start in verse 8 if you want to, the instructions to men, and give it some whatever. The 1 Timothy chapter 2 passage is what everyone thinks of first that knows anything about the conversation. And I'm just as a hint to all of my, just as a helpful thing, that's the first thing that they're going to think of, and that's the first thing that you should exegete and deal with. Period. If you are an egalitarian, you cannot try to create this whole house and then say, I'm going to take this one verse that everyone's waiting for you to talk about anyway, because it's the one that the people like Braxton think is their silver bullet. You can't just foul it off. You have to deal with that text. I don't think Titus 2 is that important. I don't think that
you don't think
1
Titus
Corinthians
2 is important
in this debate, and I don't think that 1 Corinthians 14, what is it, 33 through, I don't. There's a lot of different, but I also want to say that there's not hundreds of interpretations, right? There's maybe like 2 or 3 complementary readings that maybe have some,
and the same
nuance,
on the other side,
and there's maybe 4 or 5 on the other side, but 3 of them are garbage, so are not, and 2 of them, go listen to Nick Quint and I on theology. Trinity Radio Extra.
And then to get the other side of it, Joshua Tanis says, Mike Winger's series on this question is fanatic. So check out that fanatic series.
Yeah, I'm sure it's also fantastic. I'm not going to go
It's fantastic too?
Yeah, I'm not going to go. I'm assuming it's Mike, but I'm not going to go listen to 50 hours of some Christian blathering on YouTube on the same topic.
That's what you're doing right now.
I know. Well, but we have a different topic every week.